Chicago Theater's Latine Heritage Month panel.
Tony,
If this
so
is,
proper.
I honestly, if not, I will lose it. I'm gonna forget something if I don't. So again, thank you, Kiana.
No more interruptions.
We will get there. If this is your first time at a League event, welcome. We are an alliance that advocates for Chicago's theater industry, from regional theaters to storefronts, improvs to ensembles, and everything in between. We exist to support and amplify all the amazing theater happening in Chicago. At the League, we understand the importance of supporting diverse theaters and storytelling and the artists behind all these projects. This Latine Heritage Month, we aim to celebrate 3 theater companies and their leaders for their efforts in supporting, celebrating, and amplifying Latine communities. Before we dive in, I would like to take a moment to sincerely thank Albany Park Theater Project for sharing their space with us. And if you've not been here before and experienced Port of Entry, their current project, please do yourself a favor, get a ticket or get in the waiting list for a ticket. It's worth every second. I can attest to that. I also want to say thank you to some Humboldt Park Latine-owned businesses who pitched in to help make this event from a panel to a full-on Latine cultural celebration. So thank you to Omar Miranda from Yato Liquors, who donated the Medalla Light, Puerto Rican beer for you to enjoy. And thank you to Estrella from Cafe Estrella for the salteñas. Hey, they are available for all your catering needs, so follow them and get your orders in. But now, the reason that we're all here today, I would love to introduce these panelists by reading a little bit of their bios and giving them an opportunity to also add anything that they'd like. But we'll kick it off with Cruz Gonzalez-Cadel, an award-winning theater, film, and television actor originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Gonzalez-Cadel is a managing director at Teatro Vista Productions, a theater company founded for Latinos in the landscape of American theater. She's attained credits from Chicago Shakespeare Theater, Court Theater, Goodman Theater, Looking Glass, and many, many more. Her film credits include Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, Chicago Med, The Chi, and Empire, and again, many, many more. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone, please give a round of applause for Cruz. Our next panelist is Xavier and Custodio. Xavier is an award-winning theater director from Humboldt Park, Chicago, and the founding artistic director of Visión Latino Theater Company. In 2019, Custodio won Outstanding Director of a Musical Production for his work on In the Heights at the Alliance of Latine Theater Arts of Chicago. In 2023, Xavier won the Jeff Award for Best Short Run Director for his work on That Must Be the Entrance to Heaven. Xavier Custodio believes that theater should be accessible to all, no matter their background. Please help me. And last but certainly not least, and one of the wonderful collaborators on this panel, Miguel. Miguel is a passionate, Miguel Ángel Rodriguez is the co-executive director and proud alum of the Albany Park Theater Project. He is an artist, comedian, and educator from Chicago. Miguel holds a BA in dance in Chicana and Latino Studies from Pomona College and an MA in the Science of Education from Case University. Did I get that right? Wow. Miguel is passionate about increasing arts access for students of color. He began his career in education in the South Bronx, New York, and since then has been recognized for his work as an educator. He was an assistant principal of Kip Bloom College Prep in Englewood from 2017 to 2021, and Rodriguez was awarded the Harriet Ball Excellence in Teaching Award in 2016 and the 2020 to 2021 Surge Fellowship recipient. Please help me welcome Miguel. We want to thank our panelists for taking the time to open this discussion up with some questions from the League. And then, again, we want to invite everyone in the room to be part of this discussion once we get through some of these questions. So please hold on to your thoughts. First off, I just want to ask this question out loud, and then we can kind of see who wants to take it first, and then we can popcorn off there. Does that sound?
Great.
Okay. So the Latine community in Chicago makes up a third of the city's population. With that in mind, how does this impact your decision in envisioning your theater company's next steps? Let's start there.
I could start. I mean, the way Visión Latino started was making sure that our people is celebrated, not just seen in a certain way, right? So when we think about works that we want to produce or bring forward to our audience, we want to make sure that they see themselves in the space, like they could relate to it, they could speak to it, they could just, they'd be like, that's my grandmother, that's my, that's my parents. And so anytime we pick those shows, like to lift your voice at the end of the day, right? The strength of it. And we're very like, we're not gonna pick stuff that like is a maid and she stays a maid, but she's a maid, but she also does greater things outside in the community, stuff like that, right? So those are things that when we look at things, that's what we're looking for. For example, the show we're doing now, she's heartbroken, she got married at 19, and now we see her journey through that, right? And a lot of Latino and Latinas could see themselves within her getting married at 19 and coming from like a very Catholic growing up family, and how, her family's gonna see her. So those are things like, yes, in order for us to do shows, we're looking for just what people can relate to in the Latino space. And not just Latino, but just people that just come, right? Like, they wanna celebrate us because we're amazing.
Yeah.
I think, Teatro Vista Productions very intentionally transitioned from just a theater company to a multimedia production company. And, part of the reason of that transition is this thing you just said, right? Like, we are 33% of the population of the city of Chicago. So one of our thoughts was like, how can we serve artists, and how can we be a place where artists can come and be prepared to not only be on stage, but also become, storytellers, producers, arts administrators, because we really do believe that the only way to change the representation is, to provide a space where people can come and get hands-on experience, where they can come and get mentorship, and we really understand the power of media, like media is not just transformative in a personal level to the folks that get to experience it, it's also transformative in a legislative level, in a, like media informs decisions in so many different ways that I'm not sure, that we talk about enough, like it's so important to have stories for us, by us, and because that means that everyone else gets to like experience our, our cultural identity through our own eyes. And then I always say through specificity comes universality. So I think the more specific we are in the way we tell our stories, the more people will relate to us. I mean, there's so many cool studies that I geek about that people, for example, who watched this, I think it's a Netflix show called The Maid. I mean, I can look it up. Like 40% of people interviewed after seeing the show said that the view they view immigrants had changed after watching the show, and that now like they were going to have a different perspective when relate. Like it changes the way we perceive one another and the way we're perceived in this country. So like I think for so many years we had so many negative stereotypes and so many negative ways of being perceived that we very, very much see it as our responsibility as a Latine founded and led company to disrupt the narratives around us.
That's really dope. APTV was founded 27 years ago to provide the youth of this community a space to be able to tell their own stories or family stories in an effort to continue to build pride and and to amplify their cultural identity. One of the things I'm incredibly proud of is our school-based programs where we get to meet these 12, 11-year-olds and the future generation of the people who are going to sit in our shows, right? So as we're constantly having this conversation about how we can continue to, dismantle like what it means to go to the theater or who gets to go to theater, what theater is and what shows are up there, I'm just excited about the possibility of just bringing theater to spaces that don't have art, right? That art doesn't exist, and to allow or to give tools to kids to be able to create art from nothing, right? And to be like, that's art, right? What you just did was art, and the stories that you shared, like what you think is the mundane, is extraordinary. And those, through the shows that we put up here, in a building like this, but even in our schools at the end of the year, we put on these productions that are just profoundly better than anything I've ever seen on any fucking Broadway or, any of those stages, right? And, I think it has to start there. I mean, that's what we do as a youth theater company. I think it's also being able to bring art back to the spaces in which we come from. I mean, for those of you who know, we still have Eugene Field, the Park District, but we're on a major thoroughway in Albany Park, in between the dollar store across the street from this Mexican restaurant, and over here on the right is a laundromat. How many times do we get stopped by the people of this community and ask us, like, what is this, see the word immigrant, see the word Albany Park, and see the word theater, and be like, this can exist here? And the answer is yes, right? You do not have to go downtown to see art that is about you. There's still conversations that I think that we all need to engage in about how we can continue to, again, eliminate the walls and the pressures maybe around like who gets to go and sit in a seat and what it means to be an audience member. I love all the discussions and the pre-show announcements that I've been seeing across the country actually about like be yourself, interact with the show as much as you want, because there's still stifling ways of being in theater, right? So it's it's definitely about what we put up on stage, but even if we have the most specific show that's about our thing, we also have people who feel uncomfortable, and we have it here all the time.
As an actor myself, my favorite shows are
100%.
high school matinees.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yes, babe, tell me how you feel. In the moment right now, I love it. It's just so engaging, and I was like, I feel like this is how theater was envisioned and created, that's how it originated. When people talking back and, like booing or clapping or just being like, he's coming, just like those, and that's why I love high school matinees so much, especially of like really difficult place, because they have the best takes, because they haven't been, adulted yet.
I like where this is going, and I want to take us off course a little bit, especially to speak to the people in the room. Can you all tell us of some examples of these initiatives, whether it's getting through the workforce, getting artists involved, or getting audiences involved, ways that you have found through your theater companies that you can shake things up, that you can get a different demographic in the room. Maybe some examples, or
a person told me when we first started the theater company, he was like, don't expect Latinos to just come to you, right? You have to come to them, especially if they don't know you, right? And when they come into your space, you treat it like it's home. Vente a mi casa, my home is
We're
your
a
home.
community of referrals,
Right,
man.
that's
You know what I
it
mean?
is. And when they come in, it's like, if they don't feel like that, then they don't want to come back, right? If it's not warm, if it's not like, oh my God, like my parents are there to help, right? But also like, when they come to the space, just exactly that, I break the fourth wall every time I direct. So if you've seen my show, there's no really fourth wall. The actors always engage with them, even if the show requires there to be a wall. For me, it doesn't exist. Because if somebody comes in and don't understand theater ever, right? They want to interact with you. They want to talk to you. And that's okay. Like you could be yourself. You could be Puerto Rican. You could be Mexican. You could be whatever you want, right? And that's the way we go about things, and that's what I've learned the most, like just go out there. And like right now our show's in Pilsen, but our show's in Humboldt Park. Our show, we move around and we get to know our community. I grew up in Chicago, born and raised, right? So I know those people. And you just gotta be open to just be different and be welcoming, and don't be afraid to be out on the streets with them, right? Because it's a building that people could be intimidated to walk in. But if you want them to come in, you gotta be out there too.
He's also a TikTok star.
Oh my God, you're not talking about it.
I can already help with his marketing.
Oh my God. That's it.
And to that end, I will say, personally, I've had the privilege of experiencing Port of Entry and knowing that I was going to come back to this space. There is a definite sense of coziness and home, and how much much of that is in your all's intention with Albany?
Oh, I really wish, for those of you who have not experienced the show, for me to take you upstairs so you can actually get a sense of what it is. I mean, just to talk about the show for a moment. I mean, when we developed the show over 5 years ago, we started with home stories. We asked people to bring home something from home that told something about, anything about you and your journey. People brought picture frames and rosaries and, you know, all sorts of things, right? And that just catapulted us into, okay, we want to know more. And then we went to their homes. We got invited, got into groups of 10, and we went to over 8 homes, and we got to take photos and experience it. And we kind of just went upstairs and we just replicated everything we saw, right? And even then we weren't done, right? Like our youth are definitely the pilots of the ship here. They're the ones who get to tell us what gets put into a show, what's authentic and what's specific and what isn't. We were working on one of the homes, it's a Mexican-American home that I directed, and the home was practically finished. And one of the young actresses who was in the show was like, oh my God, my grandma just gave me another rosary. And I was like, why? How? Like, tell me more. She's like, well, she gives me rosaries like every other month or something. And I just see them on doorknobs and around the tree and around all this stuff. And then you go into that home, there are rosaries everywhere, right? Because that is her sense of home, right? Like when we're trying to replicate or we're trying to like recall like that we can just go to the source to be able to do that. One of the things here though that happened organically, again, because the youth are kind of the pilots and get to kind of dictate kind of the moves that are probably even beyond what I can think of right now as an adult, is, you know, whenever we invite audiences that are family and friends, and we have a lot, one of the moves we made is that, you know, this show is really difficult to get tickets to. I totally understand. It's something that we've been working on. It's why the show is indefinite. It's, you know, it's never going to be the thing that's going to eliminate the wall when you have only a limited number of seats, but we are always conscious about holding seats for every show that are just for this community and specifically for the family of this community. The show is not accessible if you're not a native English speaker, which is another goal of ours, is to create an all Spanish version of the show. But our youth are bilingual. And so if your parents, your grandparents, or your cousins came from Colombia, on the spot we'll translate the entire scene for them, right? And it's something that like, when I wasn't shocked at all. I would, right? If I knew that I was gonna have a one-on-one experience with your tia and she does not know a lick of, you know, of English and I'm supposed to be a Filipino American, right? I'm gonna translate right on the spot because in order for people to feel at home, you need to understand and you need to feel like you are being spoken to in a way that you can hear and be a part of something. And so that happens a lot with our shows where we'll set it one way, we all agreed on it, and then the youth halfway through go, we found a problem that will cause someone not to feel like they're part of it. It's not a universal solution, right? I wish there was something that we can pass on from theater to theater, but we're very fortunate that like we just have such a dedicated group of youth that want accessibility to be, you know, on the table.
Thank you. Cruz, I have a question for you. I saw this one, I think it's a good transition. So, I have definitely been following Teatro Vista's transition to more digital media, and I think it's amazing. I want to kind of lean this question into that. How can new traditions be balanced with old ones in the theater, especially as you all are kind of stepping out into this?
Well, you know, I think part of the really cool thing about Teatro Vista is that because we're a 35-year-old company, it is truly an intergenerational company. You know, we have folks that have been there since 1990 when it was founded, you know, we have folks that have been there for 10 years. We have new folks. We're bringing new folks there too. You know, and I think it's just about, I think what we're passionate about is meeting the artists where they are at. You know, like, because we are a company that mostly, I mean, our mission is to serve our artists. You know, we believe that anyone who walks through our doors is inherently genius and they just need the right resources, you know, and the right investment to make their ideas happen. And part of this transition to multimedia was very intentionally meeting our artists where they're at, right? Like, I feel like a lot of, you know, people in this room will relate to this, but as a Latine performer, as a Latine artist, you're not seeing yourself in the page most of the time. You're not seeing yourself in the things that are being sent to you when you're auditioning. So like naturally, a lot of our artists became curious about writing their own stories, you know, about directing their own plays, about writing short films, you know, about writing. And during the pandemic, we had the opportunity to just sit down with every artist and be like, what excites you? Like, what makes you go, this is what I want to make? And some of those answers were a fiction podcast, you know, and that's how The Fifth World, that Gabriel Ruiz wrote, was born. And it's all of our ensemble members from their closets, you know, because we were in the height. But Sherilyn Bruce, you know, is in The Fifth World, and we just brought the recording equipment to Cheryl's house, you know, and you meet people where they're at. And some people wanted to direct, and some people wanted to, again, write films, you know, so like it's a very intentional. I think the pandemic gave us the opportunity or accelerated what was naturally going to happen, which was become a multimedia production company to be able to serve our artists more effectively. Pre-pandemic, you know, when we were doing 3 shows a week, I think 2019, we hired 59 artists, I think is the number. Last year, we hired 122. And this year, we're hoping to hire 180. So also by diversifying, you know, the type of work we do, we can engage with more folks, you know, and we can explore more ideas. Even with leadership, you know, I don't have an MFA in arts administration, you know, or anything of the sort. I was just a very eager to learn, very eager to be part of a community artist, you know, and I started at Teatro Vista, being like, hi, will you guys be my friends, you know, and I started as an artistic associate, and then I became an ensemble member, and then I became an artistic producer, and now I'm the managing director, you know, and that has been a 10-year journey of me learning leadership skills in a place that is already invested in me, you know, that is invested in my growth and that is invested in my success. So that's what we are trying to be, you know, we are a place that we're already invested in all of you, even if we haven't worked with you. We're invested in your success, period.
I'm like being shut up.
You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah.
why we transitioned, and I think we have engaged more ensemble members than ever before in our history in 3 seasons, you know, because again, you can meet people where they're at and what excites them, what they want to do.
I don't know if you remember this.
Probably
Parks 20, whatever.
Okay.
Cruz was actually one of the first persons that I met coming to Chicago and that I worked with. And Cruz was actually one of the first person that spoke Spanish to me, with me when I was in Chicago, and I was just like, oh my gosh.
Chicago Shakespeare Company.
Yes.
I was like, "El Latino!" There's not many of us around in those spaces. So I was like, Mira!
So I can definitely see you working your magic and really putting in that work. And to that, I want to peel back the layer here, because there's 3 wonderful artists here, and theater makers, producers, directors, multi-hyphenated artists here that I think I want to peel back the layer of our companies and just ask you all individually, what is your vision? If we could think 5 years out for Chicago theater, specifically within the Latino community, personally, what do you envision?
There's a lot of thoughts.
Whoever wants to take that one first,
I was talking with Marissa about this just before we started this panel. And you know, you opened the floor saying Chicago is 33% Latine. So honestly, I want 5 more Teatro Vistas. You know, I want 5 more Visión Latinos. You know, I want 5 more Albany Park Theater projects. You know, like I want the seasons from every equity theater in the city, especially if they have Chicago in their name, to be 33% Latine. Okay, if you claim to be serving the city of Chicago, then 33% of that city is Latine. I want to see 33% of your playwrights in your season represent. You know, I want to see 33% of your actors at the end of the year, the hiring numbers. I want to see it in action, you know, because you can't claim to serve a city hiring 1 Latine director a year. You know, that's not going to cut it. And, you know, like not hiring playwrights, like you can't fix that stuff with casting. You know, like change starts from, you know, before you start casting. It's like intentional about which voices, which people do you bring into the room. You know, so like my hope for 5 years is that we keep advocating and we keep pushing and we keep creating spaces so that in 5 years, you know, every time you're like, what does it feel to be the only equity Latino theater company in the Midwest? And I'm like, I don't want it. I want there to be 7, 8, 10 more Latino equity companies in the Midwest, you know? I want all of us to be able to make a living. So that's my hope. I don't know if it's a goal that I can achieve alone, I can't, but, you know, or that we can achieve, but I hope it's like a collective goal for all of us to just keep looking corresponde. Just keep speaking, you know, keep speaking truth and speaking words and asking for what we deserve, you know, as a community that gives so much to the city of Chicago.
When Visión Latino started, our objective was to get people not just on stage to be Latino and like just people of color, but also behind the scenes, right? And I always tell people, like, if you want to learn how to direct, if you want to, and you don't have experience, come up. Like, you could ask me to be there, right? Because I'm a teacher at the end of the day, you know, and that is my background, so I don't close my doors, right? If you want to sit down and write as I'm directing and asking questions after, that is open, right? If you want to learn how to do lighting, and our design team also understands that. Like, if somebody wants to come in, you're agreeing that you will have them next to you, no matter what, even if they're just standing there. Because what happens, right? I didn't study theater, right? My degree is in music and administration. Those are my 2 degrees. And I was like, I want to learn, but I didn't get the chance. Nobody gave me the opportunity. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to build my own and learn and figure out my style of directing, figure out what I want to do, because I'm not a person to just complain. I'm a person to just do it, yeah. And if you come in, if you go, Xavier, I want to know, I'm like, then come. It's up to you if you want to come to that door, right? You're invited. You're welcome. And we also want to keep on developing playwrights. I've had the honor to work with some amazing playwrights and help their plays get developed, and they're new. And like one play went off Broadway, Sancocho, you know, and that was crazy. Seeing Visión Latino's name on like an off-Broadway like playbill, and then seeing it in a Samuel Fisher type of, you know, book, and Visión Latino's name with my name on it, the cast. I was like, damn, you know, we're such a small company, right? But we want to do more of that, where we get to uplift voices. Right? That it's not just our own, but like even a kid, right? I want to do this. Okay, then come, right? But you got to be willing to just write and learn and listen, you know? Because sometimes people just talk a lot and they don't step back to just listen to learn. So.
I love all this. I think the only other thing I would add is that we need people to put their money where it matters, right? Right. I mean, like part of what we're doing right now is it feels like it doesn't feel like it with us, but it feels like it's sometimes when we're all scraping for the exact same pot of money. And so we're having to make decisions about who we hire, what we put on. And so that's not a us problem, that is a them problem. So if you hear us, like fucking throw the money towards us so that we can get to 33%, or even that those theaters can get to 33% and not have to negotiate. Though I don't think that's the reason behind those decisions, because I agree, like you can make those decisions with the money you already have. I think the other thing I've been thinking a lot about is collaboration across our theaters, and how those of us who might have a little bit more sometimes could be helping to share the resources so that
resource sharing.
Right, resource sharing, and that can be people sharing too. So yeah, APTP is an organization that always takes a chance on young designers and people who didn't also study theater, right? And an opportunity to grow and to learn on the job. And so how can we be sharing? How can you be like, oh, this person's a really dope lighting designer. We don't have a job for them now, but we're looking for someone, right? So being able to share those resources, and like, I know I can hit you guys up, right? But like, what is the strategic and thoughtful way so that so we're building a bigger company, you know, for the city of Chicago, so that we have access, right? So that we're not like scrambling around for like, well, we don't have enough to do this, or we don't have this person here.
Yeah. I remember I was interviewed and they're like, oh, you're starting another Latino company, like Teatro, Vista, and Urban Theater. I was like, do you ask that from the white theater company?
Right.
And they're like, well, I was like, right, let there be 100.
Please.
Like, I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's my next quote. Let there be 100.
Let there be 100.
On on this same direction of hearing just straight from you all, and especially again involving everyone in the room, what is something you wished you knew sooner as a theater artist? Just kidding.
No, there's so much.
Honestly, that it's okay to say no.
Yes.
One of the big ones for me, that like no is a completely full sentence.
Yeah.
And that, just follow your gut. If something doesn't feel right, probably not right. I've said no to so many opportunities at work because they were asking me to compromise the way I want to portray my community and the way I want to portray our stories, and it's hard. And you see like the check dangling there, being like,
Right.
Like the.
Literally had.
it's just like, it's just a reminder. My voice is all I have. My face, my voice, my instrument is all you have agency on in this business. That's the only thing you have full agency on. What you decide to put yourself behind, what you decide to lend your voice to, it's the only thing you can control. So it's okay to be picky about how you're going to use your instrument, because as an artist, you're bringing a lot of yourself to everything you do. So I wish someone was like, you don't have to do that play when I was like, you just don't have to do that.
I want that rehearsal.
I know.
You guys know that, what's his name, Jason Robert Brown, is that his name? In the Sondheim story, where he goes and gives him feedback on one of his shows, and then Sondheim writes him like this whole thing, like, you don't get to do that. You weren't in the room. Like, you didn't get to like give us feedback. Like, you don't get to be an artist or claim to be an artist and then suddenly give all that feedback. That's something I've been laboring over. And it's that, right? Like, I think, as a young artist or what emerging artist at the time, you want everyone's feedback. You want to be great, right? Like, you have all these people that you probably put on the pedestal, right? You guys, right? And I'm like, okay, how can I match their energy and their level? And we're never going to be each other, right? And so along the same lines, we've had many fucking donors dangle money or they write us long emails or tell us that here are the things they want changed or they didn't like about a show, about this show in particular. And I learned pretty soon that it's not even nothing is going to be said. Like, I do not need to, my energy, the amount of energy I put into the work that I do and really to their work, right, to help amplify their stories is the only thing that matters, right? And there's a very small group of people who I let in, who I want to hear feedback from. And those people, we've gone through it all together, right? We've gone through the experience of giving each other feedback, of knowing each other, right? Knowing our stories, knowing where we come from, knowing why we're in theater to begin with. That's who I want to hear from. I don't need to hear from someone who writes the check. Or someone who, maybe even another theater maker who comes and wants to be pompous about the way that we tell our stories. And so I love this idea of no, but it's also like, I don't have to say anything. Right. And I said a lot before.
And the other thing that I will say is that it took me a long time to understand is that this is going to sound so like Hallmark card, but you're enough. You are enough. Every time you, I know, but like every time you walk into the room, there's literally no one else that looks like you, sounds like you, feels like you, talks like you, or is going to say those words. Like, your experiences are going to be reflected in what you bring into the room as an artist. So just trust that. There is really, at the end of the day, no competition per se in this business because you can only be you. And it's either going to be what the director wanted and what the production team envisioned or not. But we're not fighting for the role. We're just bringing ourselves to the role, and then they'll choose how they want to tell the story. But I think we're just so conditioned to think that we're just like, competing for a role or going against each other. And I'm like, it's just not true.
I think that's definitely also an energy within the organization, which is why I'm really happy to hear you all talk about that not being a problem, and within the vision of what the future of theater can look like, so much more collaboration.
I mean, I try to say everyone's names in the room every time I'm in a meeting with a funder or with a, with a new foundation or with a new donor. Like, have you heard about this work and this work and this work? Because, again, there isn't enough for all of us,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
Thank you for that. I want to turn it over. We have some time to open up the floor to some questions. From everybody joining us, I want to see if maybe we've got some questions by show of hands. Do we have questions out here for them? Yeah? Got one over here?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm new to Glata. I'm really excited. I'm also new to Chicago. And so I just want to say, like, I've had the last couple months to get to learn more about just like the depth of amazing theater that has happened in Chicago and specifically within Latino theater in the city. And so I'm really excited to get to know your individual theater companies all together. And it's also for me, I'll share, it's for me the first time in my career that I haven't worked for a predominantly white institution, a PWI. And so no offense to the other League of Chicago theaters, but like the thing that really drew me to working with Glata specifically was that like I just felt like it was the same shit, different buckets for like a lot of the other organizations. And pardon my language, I'm so sorry, that just came out. But I think one of the things, and in the sense that like I felt like I was like gonna keep trying to climb a hill, and then the top of the hill was gonna move here, and then it was gonna move here, and then it was gonna move there. And like for work that I didn't feel connected to.
Yep.
Dial in for murder was not...
I know, right? Seriously.
Sorry, I'm so petty.
Yes. and so I think that one of the things.
Haley.
Yeah. Sorry.
I know at least 3 theaters that are
That's background for what my question is, because I'm realizing that like one of the things that like I've learned as a theater administrator is that an audience looks like a couple hiring a babysitter, going out on date night, spending their disposable income, and if we're lucky, they're going to become subscribers, and it'll be for 2 tickets, aisle seat, right? And just like this very, I think, rooted in white culture, like this idea that a family is like, just the nuclear family of like the parents, the kids, there's money for a babysitter versus like the reality that I think a lot of us have grown up in, and that like that my life has been always multi-generational, and that theater experiences should be multi-generational. The idea that, theater is not for young people, that it's not for older people, that like, it has to be like this like special occasion that you spend X number of dollars on, I think was like a way that I was operating in for a long time that I realized is just not the case. So it gets to my question, sorry, that was a lot of background, which is, I think, how do each of you think about your audiences, like as leaders within your organization? And I think more so like, what is the work that you're doing, I think, to make it accessible? Like you were speaking a little bit about like how you want to make port of entry accessible. And so, yeah, I would love to hear more, because I think I just want to acknowledge I'm coming from like one very specific view of thinking about audiences in a certain way.
So those theaters, right, that are mostly white spaces that are trying to be inclusive, they would never be able to do it correctly. And I'm going to say why, because at the end of the day, when you don't understand the culture and what people want and need, especially like a director's point of view or an executive director point of view, like when you look at your people, you see them very different, right? They're your people. So you treat them such as different when they're into your space and all that. When you are in a space where they're just inviting you in, it's still cold, right? And when I'm directing a show, I think about my dad, because my dad falls asleep at every show, right? right? Because it's theater. Theater could be boring sometimes. Even the masterpiece is...
It's also in the dark.
Yeah, and it's also like, oh my God, get me out of here. But I always, when I'm directing, I'm like, okay, we gotta move, right? Like, why is it staying here for so long? Move it, right? Because people want things to be so pretty, but at the end of the day, life is not pretty. So let's move that. Let's create art, and I think that sometimes people forget that your families might come and see it, right? And how do your family connect with it, right? Like, that's so important, because if your family's connecting with it, I have my grandparents come see the shows we direct and they love it. They don't even speak English, right? But they understood it, right? Because the way it was directed, for them to just understand it. And that's what the key thing, the key ingredient that a lot of spaces like that are missing, and they will always miss. Doesn't matter who you bring, right? It will always be missed because of the space and how it was built. It was built for distance, not to bring you into anything, to the drama, to the party, to the happiness, to the sadness, right? And us Latino, we're dramatic. Right? We're up here, we're down here, we're everywhere. And
I'm
when
going to show you my phone.
and when we're expressing that in theater, they're like, yes, we get it, right? And for some reason, those spaces are scared to be like that. Be colorful, just be that. And I think that's how you bring those people in. And that's because if you go to a Latino event, it could be a Latino theater event. It's loud, it's dumb, it's what it is, it's dumb, but that's what it is. And I think that's what's missing all the time. And that's why I think, when it's time to happen.
I just don't know if I just don't think you can focus on the audience. Like I just don't think you can't think about art in like what's gonna or do things that are gonna bring people in. I just don't think that happens. And I think now we see it all the time, right? Like things become popular in 1 second and you're like, how did this become a thing? It's just, you can't anticipate what people are going to vibe with. You can't anticipate. So the only thing that you can focus on is making really great fucking art. Like really excellent art. And invest, focus on the artists and focus on making sure they have what they need to succeed. Make sure you're taking care of them. Make sure you feed them. And just like make sure your artists are really happy in your space. Make sure they're taken care of. And just make good art, and I think that's all you can do. That's all you have power over. Whether an audience is going to like I just can't think about making or producing or choosing shows that way. I just can't think about, audiences are, what do you know? Like, maybe you think they're gonna love it, and they're like, you never know. So just make what excites you, as a theater maker. It just makes what makes you really excited to go to work and be like, ooh, I want to make this. I feel like that's all you can do. I've grown tired of trying to anticipate what people are going to love or don't love, or, I just want to make really good things with people that I enjoy being in a room with.
Yeah, you're totally not wrong, right? I think that focusing on the work, focusing on the art that matters to the group of people creating the art or putting it together is most important. And on the flip side, one of the reasons why we did 2 immersive shows is, while we've been very successful with, just traditional theater, being able to create and move people into an intimate space where it's just you and me in a space. An experience, right? And this show, shows like that are difficult, and because you do have to focus on the audience experience there, right? You almost need to make it foolproof such that anyone can come, right? Your grandparents can come, and the average, white, from Ohio theater goer needs to come, right? They should have the, same experience. So being able to have a creative team that is able to think about all the elements so that the actor doesn't have to negotiate so many different answers and like, this person said this, but this other person said this is part of that, right? So yes, we're not changing the way we make our art. We're not changing what stories we tell. We'll never do that. We continue to collect stories and create story plays the way we've done over 25 years now. I think though, strategically, we do want to be ahead of a younger, more diverse, all of us do, right? And so we just made like small strategic things that, I don't know, I could share, like, we literally found influencers in our spaces and they who love our work and just said like, we'll give you an entire block of tickets and you can do whatever the hell you want, right? Like stuff like that is like the way to do it right now, because we do want to build the audience. We do want to ensure that the next generation of audience makers grow old with us don't look like what we've had,
And
right?
I think that's also part in which art you choose to produce,
Right.
like which art you choose to make, like with which artist you're putting on stage and you're centering, right? Like you look at that wall, look at the artists that are being centered, and like that should give you a good idea of why this show is waitlist only, because they're literally building the audiences of the future. I always say, like, I hear the stories of like audiences are not coming back or audiences are not going to the theater, and I'm like, I don't know if that's true. they don't want to see that, you know, but they are. I don't know how not to be very blunt. I have to learn to be less blunt. But what I mean is like, people are buying, I mean, historically amount of tickets to concerts and
tickets to movies.
You know, like, so they're going out, they're spending money, they're just not spending it in your show. So like, it's you know, you have to figure out how to create experiences. I mean, I think you unlocked something there with the experience. People, I think the new generation is not as passive as the other generations were. You know, I think they like to be involved. They like to be, you know, they like to feel like you're talking to them, that you see them, that they're part of it. You know, so I think part of our job as theater makers and artist makers is how to create less passive experiences.
And also, and not just the people that are on stage, so let's not forget that, also people behind the stage, the person directing it, or the person lighting, because then you're able to go back to just, you know, prior preference of your raising up and all that stuff, and then the show becomes authentic, right? The director, because sometimes people, they direct Latino shows or black shows, and it's a white person, or a person who doesn't understand that experience, right? And that gets lost. And I think a lot of theaters make that mistake, and that person doesn't have some experience or lived experience or whatever it is, right? Because it's such a different perspective from a director that lived that experience and understand that world, and they're directing it. It's such a different world, while another person hasn't. And I think we forget, because we're so focused sometimes on stage presence, and that's what everybody was focused on. But if you look behind the scenes and you notice the people behind it, and you see like the light designer is white, or you know, the scene design, and then it's like, what's the point, right? Then we don't have diversity anywhere. It's just a front.
One other thing, you just reminded me that like, we, for this show in particular, I mean, we don't, if you follow our seasons, we don't do shows every year. We do one show and then you gotta wait a really long time for the next one, right? Partly just because we're trying to raise the money so that we can, you know, pay our cast, pay the team, and really give the people behind the scenes like above competitive wages, right? To ensure that they have an artistic home and feel like you know your worth, and that this is a space in which, this space, right, theater in general, you could go and ask for what you deserve, right? And then they're the ones who then tell their friends to come see the show, right? Like, it works for us, it's a reciprocated relationship. And another thing we did, and this is not the first time we did it, you know, this goes back to audiences, this goes back to accessibility, this goes back to who's spending money, $20 at a movie ticket, and who's willing to spend $50 on a ticket to a show. And we all know what our shows are worth. We all know how much money we put into it, and the money aside, the time and energy, but we decided for this show to do a pay what you can model, right? So we eliminated the barrier around like you have $0 or you have $100, right? In hopes that the people who can pay the $140 will pay the $140 to offset everyone else. And we lose a lot of money on this show, right? But part of it is that we want to make sure that the person who's negotiating between I want to go see this movie, or I want to buy groceries, or I don't know if this show is for me, right? I don't know what, right, to be able to do that, right? And I don't know if we can always offer that. That's something that we've been able to do, and we're very fortunate with the campaign to build out this show. But I do think it's a way for us to start thinking about how to, you know, again, remove a barrier, get people who right now are not seeing themselves as theater goers, an opportunity to come see really dope. Yeah, and then maybe feel bad that they pay $10 and then they donate to us, and then they come back, and maybe even just coming back and being a recurring audience member is actually the investment we need, and the $10 was all we needed from them.
We have time for one more question.
Sorry, I'm not
Great question.
They picked the wrong three.
Right.
Got time for one more. Okay. Because I have one last one. Ooh. Okay. No? Okay. So, I guess this kind of gets to that point. Let's do this. So get a good job.
Yes, 3 more questions to ask.
Okay, we're gonna do this one. So with all of this change, especially coming in within the Latine theater community and within your companies, where do you feel the most pressure right now from audiences, from artists right now within? No.
I don't feel pressure. Like,
Yeah?
Yeah, it's just like I think because we've just been our own little bubble. And if you come, you like it, you're gonna love it because we know what we produce. And we know because we love it, and when we love it, you love it too. And if you don't, we'll kick you in the joke. Like, I put pressure.
I mean,
Like,
some people have bad taste.
right, some people have bad taste. Art. No.
They're like, that's not your fault.
Right, it's not my fault. I'm like, no, but like I don't
Sorry.
feel pressure, like because every show is so different. Everything we do is so different from the year before. We're a theater. We're very different from who we were last year and the year before. The way we think, the way we process, the way we see work. So to us, like, sure, if the work was last year, then sure, it'd be pressure of like, oh my God, this has to be way better than that must be done just happening, right? And then this show is so different. So there's no pressure because we're taking a risk on Josie, who never wrote a show ever in her life, and we're putting so much effort into her, and we're like, girl, if we fail, that's your fault. No, it's joking. No, but like, no, but like, you know,
I think we're sociopaths.
right? No,
That's who I'm you.
right? No, right. No, but we created like this space, right? That just for her, right? It's this bubble for her. Not from like, oh, look at what we did last show. Look, I directed. You're not gonna have me as a director. No, because we're there to support you and for you to be great, right? And so that pressure is not there because who cares, right? Because every art you do is so different. And if you're doing the same art, then you're just boring, you know. And they for sure you'd be pressured because like, oh my God, you'll be better than the last one. Then it's just boring.
Name them, tell them. I don't think we feel pressure either. I do think that one thing, you know, maybe there's a trend in what I'm talking about because money is definitely on my mind right now, all of our minds.
Yeah.
I think it's constantly telling our donors who are like, so what are you gonna do next?
Yeah.
Like, what's the big next thing? It's like, this is pretty big. And
I build.
And what we do every day in these schools in our community is monumental. And you should just trust, if you've trusted us up until this point, trust that we're going to continue to do the same good work. And we don't need to come with you with the next best thing, right? because then I go to sleep sometimes with a little bit of pressure that I don't intend to have that in my brain, right? Yeah. So it's a lot of like, so yeah, no pressure, but it's a lot of like working with my team to rewrite what we already do in really beautiful, colorful language so that people think that we're doing it right. And that's part of the name of the game, right? We all been there where we have to fucking...
My favorite one is like, how do you serve your community? And I'm like, by existing.
Yeah.
Period. Grant, ready to go.
Yeah.
It's a miracle we're here. Next.
Yeah, but it's that like, I think it's what you were saying, like the audiences that are, the trends that catch on and you're like, how the fuck did that happen? And it just as quickly as dissolves. It's like, I think donors or foundations are constantly telling us, like, they're looking for that big one too.
Yeah.
It's like, we already exist, we do great work.
Yeah, I mean, for me it's not pressure, it's kind of like a similar thing. It's not pressure as much as like just like a deep desire to have an access of resources to invest in all these great ideas that come through our doors, you know? Everyone's like, what? I mean, our dream season would be like 2 live shows and 1 short film and 2 podcasts, you know, like, just like the resources to be like, yes, we just want to say yes, you know, we just want to say yes to all the artists that walk through our doors that have these brilliant ideas, you know? So it's not pressure as much as desire and manifesting, you know, that like, that one day our companies are going to be just ridiculously well funded so that we can just invest and take risks in our community because we're the only ones doing it. We're the only ones taking risks, you know, or like he just said, you know, they're producing someone that has never been in a show before. Like, you know, like we're the company saying yes to the folks. It's, you know, I think like part of our missions is it's pipeline, right? It's like investing in artists early on while they're still learning, while they're still, you know, figuring out who they are so that then they can, you know, move ahead in their careers. So no pressure, but resources. No pressure, just give me money.
Truly a lot of revolutionary thinking that is happening here, and I know that we take it for granted on the daily of just like trudging through and doing the work, but I do want to commend all 3 of you, not just for being amazing artists, but really on the frontier of what's going on in Latino theater here in Chicago. So if everybody will join me in giving them a round of applause.